Hello, everyone. Happy New Year and welcome to Wellness Wednesday, our first one for 2021. And we're so happy that you're able to join us today. Welcome on behalf of our entire staff, Allison R2, our Executive Director for Corporate Affairs and Community Relations for Health Sciences, along with Anne-Marie Medina, who's in Tucson, and myself. I'm Caroline Berger, and I'm the Director based here in Phoenix. We're so happy that you're letting us join us again on your health and wellness journey for 2021. We know there's been many challenges and things, and we're happy that you're here to offer these tips and resources to hopefully help you with your health and wellness challenges this year. But first, I'd like to take a few minutes and introduce you to University of Arizona Health Sciences.
Welcome to the University of Arizona Health Sciences. As the statewide leader in biomedical research and health professions training, Health Sciences includes College of Medicine Tucson, College of Medicine Phoenix, College of Nursing, College of Pharmacy, and the Melanina Zuckerman College of Public Health. Together, they provide cutting-edge health education, breakthrough research, and a diverse offering of community outreach services. At the heart of health sciences, our employees, nearly 5,000, along with 4,000 students, makes us one of the top employers in the state. Our growing research and education programs are offered on 2 campuses, one at the main campus in Tucson and the other in the heart of downtown Phoenix on the biomedical campus. The University of Arizona Health Sciences is a major contributor to UArizona's well-earned reputation as one of the country's top research institutions. And each year, we receive more than $200 million in research grants and contracts, providing vital funding to help address some of our most critical healthcare challenges. We are grateful for this support, which is fueling discoveries and treatments in areas including cardiovascular disease, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and now COVID-19. The University of Arizona Health Sciences is also in a unique position to effect change in a rapidly shifting healthcare landscape. As part of our strategic plan, we have developed a set of initiatives to reshape the future of healthcare. We are focusing our efforts on 5 important areas: next generation education, precision healthcare for all, making wellness ageless, creating defenses against disease, and new frontiers for better health. Through these strategic initiatives, we have unprecedented opportunities to excel in education and research in more and better ways than ever before, and we invite you to join us on this journey. Please know that our dedicated corporate and community relations team is here to be your connector with health sciences. Thank you for your dedication and for all that you do to make our communities healthy.
So as you can imagine, we have lots of latest news, information, and research discoveries that are happening in health sciences. So we encourage you to stay informed and stay up to date and reach out to us on our social media platforms. And please be sure to follow me on Twitter at my Twitter handle, which is CEBerger. And feel free to tag your posts with our hashtag WellnessWednesdaysAZ. Today is going to be an engaging and hopefully a very informative session for you. So we encourage you to interact with us through the chat function. Right at the bottom of your screen, we will have a Q&A session immediately following Jenna's presentation. So feel free to share what's on your mind, provide feedback, and ask questions. We're here for you today. Following today's session, you will receive an email that's going to include a brief survey, and we ask you to please complete this. It's really important for us to get your thoughts and feelings, not only on today's program, but also going forward for future programs. We are designing these for your interests and for your help. You'll also find links and resources to everything that's presented here today, so you can just sit back and relax, knowing that all this information will be shared with you either later today or first thing tomorrow. And we are recording today's session, and it will be posted on YouTube, and we'll send you the link in the email as well. This way you can share it with family and friends and encourage them to get help as well. And again, you'll also be able to see past sessions in case you missed them as well. Lots of good news and information we share on these Wednesdays. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our wonderful presenter for today, Jenna Teso, who's going to talk about building better mental health in 2021 and what a timely and relevant topic this is. Jenna is the mental health counselor at the University of Arizona Health Sciences Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Welcome, Jenna.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. I am going to go ahead and get my screen shared here so I can get my PowerPoint up and running. Okay. Carolyn, can you give me a thumbs up that people can hear me and see this? Okay, good. Wonderful. So yes, building better mental health in 2021, a very worthy resolution, I think. And it's, it's a topic that we could take a million different ways, and it's a lot to kind of pack into 20 to 30 minutes. So I picked some of my favorite methods here, and I'm just going to really kind of go through a brief overview of some. I wanted to give kind of a nice smattering of different things because we're all so different, and something that works really great for me in terms of promoting my mental wellness might not work for you at all, or even make you more anxious. So it really is, I always kind of like to start by saying it really does sometimes with some of these strategies and techniques take some kind of trial and error and being willing to be creative and flexible with yourself too, and to be willing to try some things out. So I picked some of my favorites to just kind of give a brief overview of today during our piece of time that we have together. And I always start with, this isn't the fun, glamorous part of mental wellness, but it is important and it's very foundational. So first is obviously just kind of always looking after the basics, what we tend to think of as kind of those basics of self-care, really. Sleep, eating well, getting some movement in, staying socially connected. Again, most of these, besides maybe the social connections, aren't necessarily exciting topics to talk about. But I always really like to point out that these are very important to maintain our mental wellness. And these are also the very first things that tend to kind of slide through the cracks when we're starting to not be doing so well. So I always like to talk about a little bit how important it is just to kind of be aware of these things, and notice, am I suddenly, do I normally go out for a walk a few times a week and suddenly I don't have the energy to do that? I have no interest in it. Has there been something changing with my sleep patterns? Am I noticing that I'm not reaching out to friends as much as normal? These can really be kind of warning signs that can be really subtle at first, but almost always these are the very first signs that we have that things are getting a little off balance as far as our mental wellness is concerned. So I think both making these a priority in our kind of our self-care plan is really important, but also using them as kind of signs and signals to ourselves. Am I doing pretty good, or am I getting a little bit off balance? All right, so now that we've talked about the basics, it's a new year, and what an interesting new year, right? And regardless of what has gone on in any year, whenever there's a new start, and once January hits, I think we all kind of feel like, oh, this is a new start. It's a very natural time to spend some time both reflecting on what has come just before. So in this case, with the new year, we kind of reflect on the past year. It's kind of a very natural thing to do. So in terms of mental wellness, these are just kind of some ideas of what to consider. And the way that I like to approach it is there anything that I kind of want to leave behind or say goodbye to that was really present in my life in 2020? That I don't really want it to be a part of my life so much going forward. I kind of want to symbolically leave that behind me in the past. So just kind of some ideas, some prompts to think about as far as from a mental wellness perspective. Are there any regrets that I have from the last year that maybe it's time to let go of? Maybe some unhealthy habits that I'm doing. Am I doing something to self-medicate that isn't healthy for me that I want to leave behind? maybe some unhealthy thinking patterns that I want to spend less time in for the next year. Anything that you just don't want to invite necessarily to be a part of the new year going forward. And I really think that reflecting on hard times, difficult times that we've had is very important. We can sometimes want to just kind of stuff that down and not think about it, not talk about it, not process it, but it still is there. It's still there waiting to be processed. So that processing part is a very important part of the letting go process. And there are some opportunities in these hard times, and I think 2020 was a really hard year, even if you didn't have a lot of extra hardships going on, just with everything going on, obviously, with COVID and the political climate and racial tensions. That was just everybody's baseline, and then everybody has their own individual lives going on and individual hardships potentially and difficulties. So if we can reflect on those in a healthy way, what we will tend to do is look at, are there any lessons that I learned from these hard times? And I think that for me personally, and then obviously working as a therapist during this time, it's been a very interesting opportunity to be going through some of the same exact things at the same time as all of my clients were, and to see all of my clients dealing with some of the same challenges. So it was very interesting to go through the year as a therapist and just kind of seeing what were the themes that popped up. And one of those that I noticed both personally and in working with the people that I work with, both students and folks in my private practice, is that it really did, with COVID and, having to stay home and not being able to do a lot of the things that we normally do or things we have planned, kind of helped to clarify priorities and values, for example, when life kind of gets put into a little box that we're not having it used to being in. So that's just one example of a way to kind of reflect and see what we can take from the past. And looking, kind of shining a spotlight on, okay, what didn't go so well for me in the last 12 months? Sometimes by acknowledging that, it can help us to more clearly define and to see more clearly where we might like to head instead in the new year. There we go. I'm moving the faces around so I can see my type. And then we want to consider, what do we want to move towards this year? So once we've kind of thought about the past, done some reflecting, identified some changes, then the really important part for moving forward is deciding what we want to move towards. What do we want to do more of? What do we want to include or invite in this year? And that might look different for every single one of us, I'm sure. Might be some goals that we want to complete this year. Maybe we want to work on our health, start building our career or exploring new careers, exploring better relationships, having more leisure time. It can be literally anything. That's just a very small sampling just to kind of give you ideas of some kind of overall kind of umbrella topics to consider, and kind of considering, what do I need to do less of? Is there some place that my time and my energy should be going to more? So being really intentional with, okay, I want to have maybe a better relationship with my sister. So how am I going to do that? How can I allot some time and some energy to that? Maybe I'll put in my calendar that on Friday mornings, I'm going to send a text to connect. Just very, very simple things, but done with intention, can have a really, really wonderful butterfly effect when it comes to achieving these things. And it's important too to, always be thinking, what are we thankful for? What am I grateful for? And sometimes that's a good place to start if we're looking at kind of like this blank, a blank page for the year, like a new planner for the year. It can feel that emptiness and that vastness can feel kind of overwhelming. So sometimes a good place to start is thinking, what am I thankful for? And that will often kind of lead you towards like, oh, these are where, this is where I want my attention to go towards. Can be a helpful way to frame that. And just kind of as a, in anything, it's important to look at what are our values and our priorities. And I'm going to speak in a moment for a little bit about this concept of leading either a kind of a goal-oriented life versus a values-oriented life. And we can always build our goals off of our values, but it's really important to know what our values and priorities are. Priorities, you know, all of us tend to kind of pretty easily list off what our priorities are, you know, work, family, friends, our health, financial stability, whatever it might be. It's pretty easy to fire those off. But then I would challenge you to go a little bit deeper too, if you have a moment to reflect and really think, do I have those priorities in the order that I want them in? You know, do I want work up as high as I've been having it, or do I want to move it lower and see how I feel? And again, this is something that can be kind of like a working document, if you will. You can always change these things for yourself, just depending on your external circumstances, where you are internally. These can shift over time. And I think we tend to get really locked into, okay, these are my top 3 priorities and this is the order. And then things change. We grow as people, our circumstances change. We have to be willing to be flexible. So I think the new year is always a good opportunity to review priorities. And values, those can get a little more complicated. And if you Google list of values, I mean, there's lists that have like 500 different values. So values are really just what is important to us. So they might be things like achievement, happiness, beauty, creativity. I mean, the list is it just goes on and on, but it's really what's important to you. But taking some time to really identify those things and you know, even writing them out, I think is always helpful to kind of make them tangible so that you can go back to them. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about value-based living versus goal-based living. And this is something that, you know, as a therapist, I've talked about with people for years. But this year it became a really, really big topic. I experienced this personally, and many people I did, and especially students that I've been working with here at the university. You know, in particular, COVID came along. You know, we're all just kind of going through life, jaunting along. Students are going to school, we're going to work, we're working towards these goals, and we're making this progress, and it's looking the way it's supposed to look for the most part. And then bam, like one day in March, you know, everybody go home, everybody stay in, you can't come to a graduation, you can't. And it's really difficult when we are really, really focused on our goals. And that is the number one, that's where the spotlight is. That can get a little bit dangerous because, as we saw this year, something can just come and like sweep everything, sweep the rug out from under you. And suddenly reaching that goal doesn't look like it looked in our head that whole time that we were conceptualizing it. And it can be extremely devastating to us. So I've been really challenging myself and others to focus on value-based living. And I'm going to explain kind of what each of these look like. So with goal-based living, again, the spotlight is very much on the goal, kind of that final outcome. And our personal satisfaction as a result depends upon meeting this very specific goal. So best case scenario, we meet the goal, and it's kind of, you know, it can really kind of be like a high. If you're a really goal-oriented person, you probably experienced this, where it's like we meet this goal and it feels awesome for like a day or two, maybe a week, and it fades very quickly. It's kind of like if we have a shopping addiction, it feels really good. We kind of get that hit of all those feel-good chemicals when we buy something, and then it very quickly goes away. And then we need to go shopping again. The same thing can happen when we're very goal-oriented. We meet the goal, it feels really great, and then it doesn't feel so great. And now it's like, okay, well, I need to make a new goal and work towards that and achieve that so that I can feel good. Worst case scenario, we don't meet the goal, or it looks really different than how we played it out in our mind. And then we feel bad about ourselves. We feel like a failure. We have anxiety. We have stress. We get depressed. So when we're really focused as the goal, as the final out, as the big thing under the spotlight and the final outcome, and that's what's important, it doesn't always work in our favor from a mental health standpoint. Whereas if we're living more from our values, and again, goals are very important. I love setting goals and going for them. And what we can do is once we know what our values are, we can establish goals that are related to those values. And then as we're working toward that goal, we're living out that value, which then that journey becomes more fulfilling. So it's like that time that you're working towards the goal becomes more fulfilling because you can say, yeah, this is meeting my personal value of X, Y, or Z. So for example, maybe I have for some people, a big personal value is beauty and looking at beautiful things and being surrounded by a beautiful environment, for example. So maybe they set a goal of, I'm going to build in my backyard a beautiful rose garden, right? Well, that doesn't happen overnight. But when you're focused on that value of, I just appreciate beauty, you can kind of appreciate it as it's becoming that big final vision. And even if it doesn't turn out to be the rose garden you thought it would be when you started out, you can enjoy that process a little bit more. So that's kind of the analogy that I use to compare goal-based versus values-based living. So often when we know what our values are and can live from that, we have just a deeper sense of meaning. And then each goal that we build off of that, if we attach goals to it, those goals have more personal meaning for us as well. And we're much better able to cope if those goals, for whatever reason, are not met. And we become more flexible in defining what these goals are. And we just enjoy the whole process a little bit more. All right, so a couple other, I just wanted to throw out a couple other just little kind of behaviors and actions, simple things that we can do to promote our mental wellness. And people talk about this a lot, and it's so important, and that is visualizing. So much we're always playing out stories in our heads. And unfortunately, we tend to engage, for whatever reason, as humans, in a lot of negative storytelling about things that aren't even real. We kind of play out tragedies. So using visualization can be a great tool to, again, with intention, start telling ourselves some good stories, or even just imagining ourselves, in a beautiful location. And you just have to do this for like 5 minutes. Can have a really big impact on our mood. So if we're feeling anxious or just kind of low, if you can give yourself just 5 minutes to commit to yourself and just close your eyes, imagining yourself somewhere beautiful and nature. When we imagine nature scenes, that tends to have a particularly good effect on mood, calming our anxiety. And then just imagine yourself feeling these emotions you want to feel, whether it's happiness, joy, calm, relaxation. And the more you can include your senses, the more effective this will tend to be. So imagine feeling a breeze, or if you're in a forest, you smell pine trees, or if you're by a beach, you smell those like salty beach smells. And just set a little timer for 5 minutes. I like to go out on my balcony every morning for 5 minutes and just take a second alone by myself to kind of take this time for myself, and it really helps in setting the tone for the day. So you can YouTube, guided visualizations, all kinds of things. You can get really, really creative. And it's very important to take action and to do it, really this needs to be manageable and do things in small ways. So you want to schedule things or put them to the to-do list, however you kind of plan your day. How they always say, if you want to work out more, put it in your schedule. Same thing with these, small practices that we can do. So it might be, like in my calendar, I always put, take my 5 minutes in the morning, and at night, do something to calm down, whether it's like having some tea or a bubble bath or whatever. And I like to kind of check it off, like I check off the other things, because otherwise life can just kind of take over, and there's always more work to do, always more tasks to get done, and then we get kind of cranky, and we don't feel so good when we're not making ourselves a priority as well. But it really does take just these small actions. If we try to make it too big, we're not going to do that. either. So very small, intentional things, send a text to a friend, go for a walk, whatever, but literally scheduling those in can really make all of the difference as far as making ourselves do that. And then my final little suggestion here before then we'll kind of delve into some questions is, kind of establishing a self check-in. Some people like to do this daily. For some people, daily feels too overwhelming and maybe more of like a Sunday thing as you're getting amped up for the week, more of a weekly check-in. To just, so much of the time we're just on autopilot. So it's just taking a few minutes to just really check in one at a time with our mind, our emotions, our body, our soul, our spirit, whatever you want to call it. And then also our relationships and our connections, so really asking myself, how do I feel in my body? Do I have any tightness? Do I have any pain? Is there something that I need today or something that I need this week? Do I need to take a hot bath? Do I need to get a massage? Do I need to make a doctor's appointment? And kind of go through each of those areas and just really check in, really label how you're feeling in each of those areas. And then really asking, what do I need and what can I do to support myself in each of these areas? Watching a funny movie, maybe my emotions are fried and I just need to, spend Wednesday evening watching a funny movie, and kind of penciling that in. So it's just, all of these very simple things, but done with intention really, really makes a difference. I know we have just a few minutes, and all of these are just kind of like jumping off points. So, just kind of like spark some ideas maybe in your head, and you can, if you Google any of this stuff, you'll get a ton of information, but hopefully these are just some ideas to maybe, start with if you find yourself drawn to some of these. So I think now we will take some questions, and I'll go ahead and just stop sharing because I can never figure out how to see the chats when I'm sharing. So yeah, any questions or tips or ways I can help, I'm happy
And I thought this is such great information to share, and it also brings to mind a couple things. And yes, please use the chat function. We'd love to hear from you, questions and comments and things. The new year comes, and I think there's a lot of people have this expectation, to create these resolutions and or goals for themselves. It kind of gives you, kind of sets your sights up high. And I think, as you said, with a goal-oriented person like myself, it can be difficult, especially in these challenging times. So you brought up some great points. The other thing I was going to ask you about is, there's that old saying about the oxygen and the plane, that you need to take care of yourself with the oxygen before you can share that. And if you're a caregiver or a parent, can you talk maybe just a little bit about that, the importance of taking care of self in relationship to being a caregiver or a parent, self first?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the more, the longer I live, the more I realize how important that is. And I think a lot of times we get these small signals from ourselves that, we're not taking care of ourselves. And I think for a lot of us, that might kind of pop up as irritability, maybe even full-blown anger. And the next thing you know, we're caring for others like a really resent-filled place. And so I think it's really important to monitor that. I think particularly like, if we're parenting or if we work in a job where, we're really caring for others a lot and taking on a lot of their energy. I mean, certainly as a therapist, I experience that. And I know for me, when I start to get, irritable with folks, and usually I take it out on my family. And so we need to pay attention to that. And that's another signal to say, okay, I need to make myself more of a priority. And people tend to think of self-care as like this big thing, this big commitment. And it's going to take all this time and I don't have time for it. And if I can't do it right, I'm not going to do it. And we'll see that too, often, even with students that I work with in these very rigorous, programs that they're in, it feels like too much. So I always suggest just pick one thing that is going to become kind of your non-negotiable self-care thing, whether it's reading or going for a walk or, you know, talking to a friend or whatever. And that kind of becomes your non-negotiable self-care thing, something that doesn't take a ton of time so that you'll actually do it, and start there and see how you feel. And you can always build off of that. But I think just one non-negotiable is really important.
I think that sounds great. So we have a question about sleep. You know, there's a lot of these things that impact our sleep, and someone has a question about having nightmares at night that lead to depression when they wake up. Any suggestions for that? How to get a better night's sleep?
You could probably talk for hours about that and nightmares, and you know, a lot of people struggle with nightmares, and then those emotions that we feel, you know, with any dream are very, very real, and then we wake up. I always call it kind of an emotional hangover when I wake up with with a bad reaction to a dream, because it really stays with you and you're actually experiencing those emotions. Your brain isn't delineating, oh, this is a dream versus not. You know, the best thing, you know, and I don't know what might be causing your nightmares. You know, sometimes we're trying to like process something as we're sleeping. But, you know, I would start with, you know, right before bed, as you're lying in bed, really intentionally visualizing some positive images. You know, we've all experienced, sometimes we take things from the day before and we dream about them, just kind of random things. So if you can spend some time really focusing in on just, you know, that might be a time to do like a nice positive visualization of like a nature scene or a positive memory or something that you're looking forward to. And on the flip side, it might be a good thing to do in the morning too, like right before you get out of bed, if you have had nightmares, just to kind of intentionally start visualizing something more positive. You know, our thoughts and our visions that we hold have such an impact on our mood. You know, so I would say, you know, kind of maybe start playing with getting into the habit of, you know, 5 minutes as I'm lying in bed to fall asleep, or even like maybe put on, you know, YouTube on your phone by your bed, a guided imagery or a sleep meditation or something, and just kind of see if that makes any difference, getting yourself into a certain headspace, an emotional space before you fall asleep might be a place to start there.
Great, good advice. Someone wrote and asked, curious about your work with medical students and clinicians. How can we best support their mental health during this stressful time?
Sure. So I actually don't work with the medical students. They actually have their own whole staff of folks who work with them. But I do work with veterinary, pharmacy, and nursing students. So all very rigorous things. And, you know, really, the biggest thing that we can do to support them is, you know, we really see among these students very dedicated, very high performing, and very stressful. You know, if they're in their clinical experiences, it's very stressful. You're responsible for people's lives. There's just a lot of stress going on here. So, you know, I think the number one thing is they tend to very much not engage in any self-care at all. So really setting an example, I think, as staff and faculty of caring for yourself, and, you know, encouraging them to engage in self-care. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, a culture shift eventually is going to have to happen. Unfortunately, I'm sure many of you probably heard the statistics that sadly, you know, physicians have extremely high rates of depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, and suicide attempts. And, you know, ultimately a cultural shift has to happen, I just think, in the field itself. But it kind of starts at home, and it starts with giving permission, and I think setting an example of good self-care and allowing for that and encouraging it, rather than saying you're not working hard enough. So it kind of starts, I think, within each of us to start to shift that culture a little bit, and to talk, and I think talking about it goes a long way too, and shining a little light on it is important.
Yes. Well, we're just about to run out of time here, so let me go ahead and thank you, Jenna, for all your great words of encouragement and your information. And we'll be sure to share all resources and things that we've talked today. There are a couple of questions we weren't able to get to, so we'll also be able to address those as well to give you some information there. And continuing on with the new year, we'd like to invite you to join us back 2 weeks from today, January 27th, for another New Year resolution, cleaning out your medicine cabinet. Probably, I could safe to say, one of the most neglected areas of your home. How many of you have cleaned out your medicine cabinet lately? Important question. It is an important thing to do for your health and for your wellness. So we're going to learn and talk more about that in 2 weeks. So again, thank you all for joining us today. It was wonderful to have you here. Look forward to more information and more resources coming your way. And always, please stay safe, bear down, and masks up. Have a great week, everyone.